Today is Monday, March 24th, 2025, and this is Spring Office Hours, Season 4, Episode 7, JDK 24 with Billy Korando. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how's it going?
Oh, what a good day. It for me, it's I'm around the world. I guess maybe some of you know the spring is pretty popular. And
It
right now
is.
I'm joining from Krakow, Poland.
Ooh,
And this is nice. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And all of the spring developers that I've been talking to today are super brilliant, super smart, great questions. It's been it's been a whirlwind tour, a spring one tour, if I may. And it's
it's
been
1 o'clock here on the East Coast. What time is it for you?
it is 6 p.m. in
6
Krakow.
p.m. All right, not bad at all. That's
Not
pretty
too
good
bad.
time difference.
Yeah.
Cool. So what have you been doing? Traveling, talking to spring developers. What's going on over there?
I am literally going from customer to customer, day to day, sometimes even more than one customer during the day, and having a lot of fun talking about whatever they need to talk about. This is kind of how we partner. The other part of our job, where we're not on camera or doing content or on stage at a conference, the other part of our job is we work with our customers. We work with the customers to kind of help them see all the new cool things, keep them updated, show them all the cool ways that they can leverage Spring, talk about new use cases, and also help them work through their problems. And that's one of my favorite parts of the job. That's what I've been doing for
Cool.
most of the month. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, we've been traveling a lot lately. Me, 3 out of the last 4 weeks. Finally home. Good to be home for a little bit now. So I'm excited to get caught up on some things. One of which is this show. We haven't had a show in a couple weeks. So yeah, excited to be back doing this show. And you said it before the show, and I've kind of experienced it over the last month. Every time I'm on the road, people have just come up to me and said, like, oh man, you guys are doing a great job with Spring Office Hours. I love it. I'm tuning in every week. I learn a lot, so keep going. So it's always nice to hear that, because we have our faithful group of people who join us here on the live stream. But I don't know, I don't talk to other people. So when I get to talk to other people, it's nice to see that they're tuning in and that we're doing a good job. So that makes me happy.
And you know what else? I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have even more people that are watching us from EMEAs and Africas and this part of the world, because this is kind of a nice time. Like, have a bite to eat, go sit down in front of whatever channel you want to watch us on, and like hang out for a little bit. I don't know why we don't have more people doing it.
And you could take us anywhere. I got to spend a little time with our good friend Jitter Ted last week, and he said he takes us on his runs. I said, wow, that's a commitment. So thank you very much, Ted, for that.
That is, and Ted, I've taken Ted on a run where I listen to Twitch. If I bring my phone, I can listen to him streaming live when I go run. So I've done that even on this little tour. I went for a run with Jitter Ted in my ear. So yeah, nice. I do the same thing.
Well, this is a good time to remind you and everyone at home that this is a live stream. We usually do this every Monday from 1 to 2 Eastern. If you are not live and you can't catch us live, you can always catch the replay on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. We also go ahead and take this and turn this into a podcast, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts from.
Jitter Ted is on a run right now. He stopped his run to stop and text and say, I'm on a run right now. Okay. So we have that. This is great.
That's awesome.
This is what a time to be alive, huh?
Yep. And I got to see Ted last week, and he was like 3 miles from where he lives, like 3 miles from where the conference was.
Yep.
And he said, like, that Oracle campus, it's like I'm part of his running route. So I know where Ted runs now.
That's cool. So you've brought up last week. I was a little jealous of seeing all the good stuff, all the good shows, all the good, cool faces from the community. And why don't you tell me a little bit about it?
Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. But before I do so, I'm going to bring somebody on who was also there and a big, important part of that conference. And yeah, I'm just going to bring him on because we're going to talk about JavaOne. We're going to talk about JDK 24. And that is our good friend, Mr. Billy Korando. Billy, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for bringing me on. Actually, you were just talking about running, and actually, yeah, I was one of the things I made sure to do is wake up every morning and actually go on the run that on that trail you guys were just talking about, which is really dark at like 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm being totally honest. Like, I was just like running along, kind of like whatever, and then look, I'm like, oh no, there's someone like running right at me, and then us having to decide like, okay, do you go right? Who's zigging, who's zagging, and
Did you run with any groups? Because I know there were a couple of different groups running. I saw.
No, so Chad Arimura, who's like the
Yeah.
VP of the Java Dev role, he did organize a run, and I was planning on doing it, but then I had a 8 a.m. lab
Yes.
that I was helping out with, so I was just like, that's just going to be a bit too close to time because yeah, I ended up having to go out a bit earlier. Oh, we're also being joined by Vicky now.
We had a special guest. We had a special guest
Yeah.
there. That was great to see. So, Billy, for those who don't know you, they should know you because you are now a returning guest on Spring Office Hours. But if
That's
they
right.
missed that previous episode, can you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm a Java developer advocate with this little company you might have heard of called Oracle. Of course, you can kind of see that in the title there. But yeah, also probably one of the fun facts is that DaShaun and I, though we're not in the same city right now, are both based in Kansas City. In fact, we also work together on the Kansas City Java users group. So yeah, thank you, DaShaun, for also helping out with running that last week. Yeah, no, it was kind of good because like I did not have any time for anything else besides JavaOne last week.
Yeah, and you're also a big part of KCDC, which we have submitted some CFPs to. That's coming up in August. We are crossing our fingers.
Yes, we're actually about to get into the most painful time of running a conference, which is the talk selection, just because we're both very fortunate, but also very unfortunate. We get so many great submissions. The unfortunate part of that is that then we end up having to decline a lot of great submissions. And then of course, I do end up knowing, particularly in the Java side of almost everyone. And inevitably there's a bunch of people that I know personally and good friends with that we end up having to say no to. And it's it is by far the worst part of running a conference. Like, yeah.
Don't be mad. Here's the way I look at it. If my talk doesn't get selected, I get excited because I know that means there's going to be amazing talks at the conference.
Yeah.
I know where I'm at. I know exactly where I'm at. But if I don't get accepted, like, fantastic for us. That is great. Great for everybody that's going to attend.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly I also kind of take the same view, but you just never know. It's just, because people take time, they put the effort in to submit. And I think it's maybe more for people who don't submit as often. I get more worried about as well, just because, for us, we submit to a lot of conferences, so we're used to getting some rejection as well. Some people, if they only submit to like 1 or 2 conferences a year, I definitely understand, that, hurting a bit more, just getting that rejection. So, but yeah, like I said, it's a very difficult part.
And it is becoming increasingly hard to get into conferences because of positions like DevRels. There are people within organizations that this is all they do is go out and submit to conferences. So I don't know the numbers on it, but I imagine over the years submissions have gone like up. So it's become increasingly harder to select those talks.
Yeah, it is very difficult. It's actually kind of interesting that one of our most popular tracks is the human skills track. Like, if you want to speak at KCDC, like, definitely submit to it, but also submit to some other tracks, just because I think so, because we have maybe 12 slots for human skills, but we usually get like 200 submissions for it. So
Wow.
obviously just the law of numbers there makes it very difficult.
That has been one of my hacks, mainly like the end of last year and this year, or even like DaShaun and I did, I think a workshop somewhere a year ago, is like submitting to different tracks. Like we submit workshops now because not a lot of people submit 4-hour workshops. They don't want to get into that. That's a good way to get into a conference. Submit to other tracks. Like I know I'm going to submit to a Java track. I'm probably going to submit something to an AI track, but I've submitted to like the skill side of things before too. So nice little hack there to not always submit to the most popular tracks because those are probably harder to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some conferences like DevOps, like they also kind of show like what they have had, submissions to. So that can also be a good barometer of areas that might also be good for less covered, because like you said, if you're submitting to the most popular track, that does make things just a bit more difficult to get selected, unless maybe you're sponsoring that company, and then your company's sponsoring that can kind of help your chances and stuff. But that's definitely a good hack, especially if you're planning to getting into the speaking area.
Cool. So just to remind everyone who's joining us here on the live stream, please get your questions in. If we can't answer them, we'll have some help from Billy here, especially when we get into kind of JDK 24 stuff. But I figured we start with JavaOne. JavaOne was off for a year, correct? It was 2 years ago, off for a year, and then back this year. And it was in San Francisco, I believe, last time. Is that correct? Or Vegas?
Vegas. Yeah, it was in Vegas. It was part of the Oracle Open World Conference. And one of our goals as a team was to make JavaOne its own independent event again. So awesome. It was in, I mean, you can kind of say San Francisco colloquially. It was more, it was like specifically like Redwood Shores, which is kind of closer to like Silicon Valley, San Jose areas.
And a nice short Uber from the airport. I think it was like 10 minutes, so that was nice. I thought it was just a wonderful conference. There were so many people there, so many people to talk to. The hallway track was awesome as always. But I do want to start this off by saying kudos to your team, Chad, Shar, you, Jose, Nico. I'm forgetting a lot of people, but you guys were all up on stage in the one keynote, and you guys just did an awesome job. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I was really happy with how it turned out. Like, I mean, there was definitely nervous points as you're, doing restarting a conference for the first time. Obviously, JavaOne had a lot of history, and a lot of name proceeds. And of course, also we're lucky in that, we have a unique position in that we, many of the top JDK engineers are Oracle employees. So we were able to obviously bring in some of the literal, top Java experts. And, I always like to joke whenever someone's like the top contributor on something, it's like, even if they send if they say something that's wrong, they can just do like a PR, be like, no, that's actually what it's supposed to be like. But I was really happy with how it turned out. Like running corporate conferences can be very difficult because you're handling multiple different layers of it. But we got a lot of positive feedback. So I was very happy with that. And like, I was definitely like reaching out to people that were there, people that also have a lot of experience running conferences, and that would give very candid advice or candid feedback if something was wrong. And like consistently things are good. Obviously there's always room for room for improvement, and we'll definitely continue to try to do that. And hopefully we'll be back again next year. No promises, but I think the vibes are good about doing that. So I was really happy with how it all turned out.
Yeah, that was great. One question I did have, I noticed some of the sessions were recorded. Were all of the sessions recorded? Are they going to be available at a later time? What's going on there?
Yes. So everything except for the hands-on labs are recorded for somewhat obvious reasons. You know, seeing people kind of sitting in there for 2 hours, just kind of typing away, not exactly makes for great YouTube videos. But yeah, all the sessions are recorded, and we'll be slowly kind of releasing those on the Java YouTube channel. Like one of the things we try to do is release them, you know, like on a cadence, not just try to dump them all at once. And that way all the videos can kind of get an opportunity to kind of gain some audience, because otherwise, you know, from experience, it's like, sometimes like some conferences do just, you know, we're gonna dump them all, you know, on a couple of days, and then
I click save to later, like all of them.
Save to later, and they just never maybe get attraction to where, you know, maybe of those, like only a couple of videos might get like, you know, more than like 1,000 views, and then some of them only get a couple of hundred. And you know, a lot of these, again, we have are very fortunate that we have a lot of excellent speakers at JavaOne. So each of those you know, are definitely worth, you know, kind of having their own opportunity to gain some traction.
Yep, and lots of really good Spring content, by the way. So if you are a Spring fan, make sure you look out for those, because there was a lot of really good Spring talks there as well. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well, because I did not get a chance to really sit in on anything. I sat in for a few moments on one talk by, oh man, I'm trying to blank on it. Yeah, I can't remember, but then I also sat in at the very end when they had the Ask the Architects panel, because like otherwise, like I was just running everywhere. Yeah, we did a few live streams as well, from JavaOne, my team. So those were very nice to see.
You did those before like the keynote, so I wasn't sure if those were live. Where were you guys recording those?
So yeah, one of the nice things is we have a really nice studio at that conference center. So like it's kind of back in the back area.
It was in the same building though?
Yeah. So if you were like, if you went up to the second floor and kind of went all the way at the end of that hall where like all the beanbags were, that was like where that studio was located. So yeah. So that was really nice. So yeah, we did like before like the keynote, like the technical keynote to start the conference, and then the community keynote on the last day of the conference. Like we did like 30 minutes before the keynote, and then 30 minutes or so after. And then on the second day, we brought in a bunch of different guests from like the JDK engineers. One was a surprise for everyone involved, because Brian Getz actually ended up kicking that off, and he didn't realize he was doing that until about a couple of minutes before that. Because initially it was Gavin Bierman, who's kind of like the lead of the Amber team, was supposed to do it, and he's like, I'm actually in the UK right now. We're like, oh no.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, that's just the magic of conferences, where it's just a bit of chaos, where it's just like, oh no. Okay, this thing came up all of a sudden, let's fix it. So
well, I had to get up at 5 o'clock on Thursday morning, 5 a.m. to take a flight home. And I ended up watching the keynote, the last day keynote on the plane, because I had Wi-Fi. So I saw you and Vincent talking, and then I saw the whole keynote. So I was still at the conference, even though I was on a plane.
Got it. Nice.
Billy, no, those are some a whole lot of sessions, or any sessions, because you were busy. Dan, did you have a favorite session that you saw?
Yeah, I had a couple, I think. I'll mention three quick ones. One, I finally got to meet Adam Bean in person. He did a talk on kind of like hacks in Java, just like workarounds and things that he's doing. And I was telling you before the show, like I love Adam's kind of like humor and ways that like he kind of teaches things. So it was fun to sit on his session. Brian Getz had a session where he kind of talked about like where Java is going. And he's just like a dictionary or an encyclopedia of information, and just like kind of like spit out all the information of like where we've kind of gotten to this point and like where Java's going. And it really did start to put like all these, you know, because these JEPs are just JEPs in a release. And then like he kind of tied them all together. I was like, oh, I see like why you're releasing this. And now, you know, pattern matching of like primitive types, like it's all kind of like fitting together now in my head. So that was really interesting to see. And then Alana did a 12 talk to production, which was really good, and kind of like a couple of things I didn't know I picked up in that session. So yeah, I went to a whole bunch of sessions. I only had that one talk, so I had an opportunity to go to a bunch of sessions, and it was really good to see. I see all these speakers on YouTube and online, right? But it's just different. It's different being there in person. You can't like put it on in the background. You get to like sit there and focus for 45 minutes. So yeah, there were so many great sessions. I can't wait to see some of the replays.
Was there any Billy, was there any like themes that came out? Like what were the themes? Again, obviously Java 24. Were there any other themes that we should be listening for or thinking about? Anything that like stood up for you?
So yeah, I was so deep into like our own thing. So like some of the higher level themes. Maybe back to a little bit of like I was focusing on is so along with Jose Palmard, we ran some hands-on labs. So I think it's also like I need to give a lot of credit to Jose. Like he's the one that really put together almost all the content. Like all I did was just kind of review at the end and offer some feedback on the readmes. But yeah, we ran two hands-on labs 5 times across those two. One was with Amber and the other was with Loom. But he kind of also, and both of them, and very much with Amber, is focusing on the data-oriented programming, which is, I think, a big theme that kind of Dan was kind of touching on, that's kind of really something that's really kind of starting to come together in Java right now, with some of the features like kind of really coming out of Project Amber.
So
and we're going
to Project Amber.
Yeah.
But what is it?
Yeah. So Project so for the OpenJDK, like a lot of like all these JEPs, like the vast majority of them are usually attached to some particular OpenJDK project, and they're kind of like usually loosely coupled or sometimes very tightly coupled concepts that kind of focus on a particular area. Project Amber is a bit unusual because it has like an ongoing theme, but the purpose of it is to kind of continue to add new language features to Java. And a particular theme on that is adding like data-oriented programming concepts and also pattern matching. Actually, that's where the name Project Amber comes from. I can't remember the name of the book, but there's like some book series where it's like, and it's like the Chronicles of Amber or something like that. But there's like some theme where it's like they have to like get across like some sort of puzzle, and it has to be following some sort of pattern. So that's like why that's the name of it all. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are such nerds.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
That's my people.
Yeah, but that was a major theme. Yeah.
And the hands-on lab was just like, hey, let's go and explore Project Amber.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So both of them incorporated major data-oriented elements to it. Of course, the Amber lab, that was pretty much all it was focusing on. And then the Loom lab, like Joe said, like the first part of it was kind of reorganizing or refactoring a application that was written into spaghetti code, or was written in spaghetti code, and then rewriting it to be a bit better. I like to joke now, is like from spaghetti code to lasagna, so now it has layers. So I think I may keep that one for in the future. Yes, the labs are available on GitHub under, I'll see, let me get you guys that link so you can share it. But yeah, so before I do that, but what was also really interesting with the Loom lab is also a major thing that's going to be coming is structured concurrency. So right now it's still in preview, and it's still going to be in preview in JDK 25, but there's like a major update to, yes, Sid Remy, Amber refers to the Roger Zeleny books, and there's like one specific one where like Amber is in the title.
Nice.
Yeah, but yeah, so the Loom Lab focused on the updates that coming to structured concurrency, and that's going to be really big when it comes, because right now writing concurrent code in Java can be very difficult. So like, we have like, you can write it as an executor patterns, or you can also, like, you have Spring Reactor where you can write it as reactive patterns. For me, like, I tried to write reactive code and I'm just like, I don't understand what's going on. That's just maybe on me.
I've said that to myself many times.
Yeah.
It's a paradigm shift for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But even if you do eventually kind of figure out to grok reactive programming, one difficulty still kind of remains is in the operational aspect of it. That, okay, so you have like some sort of request come in, and then it's going to spawn on like all these other future requests, and then like some error happens. It can be difficult to then trace back, being like, okay, this failure was from this parent request, and maybe it's because that parent request sent something bad, or now you just need to figure out how to roll it all back. And so structured concurrency, it's not a new concept, it's just something that's new that's coming to Java, really allows for saying like, okay, this block of code, these concurrent tasks all have some relationship with one another, and then it can give some inspection into it, saying like, okay, we're going to wait for all these tasks to complete, or we're going to take the first result from these tasks complete, or you can implement your own behavior saying like, okay, if half of these complete, we're good, and just ignore the rest. Or, one of them fails, you can say like, okay, this one failed, and now we have to start rolling back all these concepts or all these other transactions or things that have been executed. Like, it really conceptualizes, and then also it can put that relationship between that parent thread that called those tasks and all those subtasks, as well as for that big operational benefit. It's like, okay, so this task failed, and then this is a parent task that started. And also, Sid, Remy, I'm seeing the structured concurrency that feels a bit awkward. So yeah, and that's one of my one of the nice things as well. So for the lab that we did, we were using the Loom EA build, which has an updated update to the structured concurrency API. Because yeah, that's what I also found, is like when I first started using it, it was like, oh, this just isn't so easy to use. Like, if I wanted to implement my own kind of strategy for like how these tasks would work, I had to like extend an entire class, and it's just like, what the heck is this? But yeah, the new one, the new structured concurrency API is a lot more intuitive, a lot easier and simpler to use. So that's what we have. Let me take a moment to see if I can get to the labs. Here we go.
Somebody just had a comment here that said the new joiner way for structured concurrency, it will be previewed in JDK 25.
Yeah, so these are the two labs that Jose put together.
Awesome. And DaShaun, I was in the room. I was going to sit down and take one of these labs, and then I realized it was 2 hours and that my talk was in an hour, so I couldn't stay, so I had to leave. I'm so upset.
So there we go. I put it into our chat, and thank you for sharing that. I also put the Loom lab as well.
Awesome.
And so again, we used the updated API. Part of that is because we knew that was what's going to be coming out eventually, so there's no point in sewing the API that was in 24, because, well, yeah, for obvious reasons. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's so like, one of the classic Java books is Java Concurrency in Practice by Brian Getz. That's the chief language architect. And I think it's going to be one of those books that's going to be like truly out of date once the structured concurrence API becomes finalized. And then there's also like the stable values, which are not stable values, but the scoped values, which is also all kind of related. And so it's like, yeah, that's going to be a big update to concurrency in Java.
I got a question. If somebody wants to contribute to Java, if somebody has ideas about where Java should go, is that a thing? Is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get started, actually, that's one of the things I was talking with Donald Rabat on during our live stream. So the best place to get started would be probably with like the OpenJDK mailing list, and probably focus. So like also something I was talking with Donald with is that don't try to take in like the entire list. Like try to focus on one specific area, like maybe just Amber or Loom or whatever it might be, because otherwise you're just completely overwhelmed and it'll just be too much. But yeah, kind of get idea where the project is right now. And then also a big thing is, maybe you do actually find a bug. There's definitely those bugs in the JDK. And if you do ever find that, providing a lot of good feed or like saying like, hey, this is it, like here's like the information, like the test or whatever, that's so like this is it, like here's like maybe like a GitHub repository and like with like the unit test or whatever test that's so like this issue occurring, like providing like a lot of specific concrete information on an issue you found can also be a really great way, because also I think like Mark Reinhold from like years ago kind of talked about just like it's like if you just do like a drive-by comment saying like, oh, okay, like let's say like the structured concurrency API, like you think the new API design is just terrible. It's like, oh, this is terrible. You should go like Kotlin, does it like this, and you should just exactly copy Kotlin and then just like, and that's it. Like, you just pop in, leave this huge thing about like you should completely rethink what you're doing and then leave. Like, we're not going to really seriously.
These aren't little or easy. If you want to provide feedback on Java API, or the JVM or the tools or anything, maybe you should have well thought out feedback.
Yeah, but well thought out feedback. Yeah. So go ahead.
But even just what Sid said, like being able to take try to test drive some of these new features in an EA release and be able to provide feedback. Like, hey, I tried this new structured concurrency. I found it to be a little bit confusing. What is this? What is that? Like, that is valuable feedback to the engineers going, oh, okay, maybe we didn't make this as intuitive as we had hoped for, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly, and I think that's also probably where a good area would be, is to kind of focus when something is on you. Like right now, like the engineers would be desperate for feedback on structured concurrency, because like there's also still time to change it. Whereas like saying like, hey, how you wrote records, like, you just did it wrong. You should have, allowed them to be mutable or done it like Lombok, as like this pure syntactic sugar or something like that. Like, it's too late. We're not going to go back and completely redo records. We finalized it. So, kind of also focusing on an area where that is in EA development. And then like also particularly for like JDK 25, like right now would be a good time to like maybe update your builds if you can, to maybe take in JDK 25 EA builds. And we have about 3 months now until we branch off. Yeah, until we branch off JDK 25. And this is like the time like where we can really take feedback. It's like, oh yeah, we found something like a bug, or we found, like maybe we should tweak this, kind of area. And that's how you can kind of be able to actually, start to contribute feedback. And then, if you start to do that, it's like, oh, okay, yep, Dan, he actually continually provides like good feedback. Like, he provides a good bug report, or like, he suggested this thing and kind of backed up on why it should be this other way. And then like that's how you can slowly build up a reputation to be like, oh yeah, Dan consistently or DaShaun consistently provides good feedback. And then when he says like, hey, we should really go this different way with this API design, it is a pretty significant redesign. It's like, you know what, we'll more seriously consider that. Or, maybe eventually you end up being on the OpenJDK team as well. That's kind of what you're going for.
String templates is a really good example of that. Like that came out, got a bunch of feedback, and instead of just pushing something out that wasn't going to work, the Java team said, all right, we're going to take this back and rethink this and do it right.
This to me, great job bringing up the string templates, because this is, I think, the clearest example for me of how the Java ecosystem and its stewardship has become even more open as of late. This machinery that's required, right? I don't know if you know, but Java's used in a lot of places all over the world. And
just a few.
the ecosystem requires this well thought out, this a lot of people involved in order to make these changes. And the other thing that Java has done a really good job of is being backwards compatible, right?
Yeah.
Where we can still support the 1.0 stuff that a lot of other languages can't. A lot of other languages have made the decision, oh yeah, when we do this major version upgrade, sorry, we're not going to commit. We're not going to hold any of the promise that we made to the API. That's great. The last time that you were here, you encouraged me to install Java 24 EA, the early access. And I know that Java 25 is already early access. I think that we're starting to see a theme here. I know that today I've got the Java 25 early access and it's available. It's even available on SDK Man. We can go out and take this for a spin. So for those that are watching, is now the right time to take 25 early access for a spin?
Absolutely. Yeah. And not only that, like the early access builds usually it's like, as I was kind of mentioning, so we have what's called like ramp down phase 1, which is usually about 3 months ahead of a release. That's when we branch off that build from the main line. And then, that's when it starts hardening and focusing only on fixes, which is to say that then here in about the June or maybe early July, you'll start even getting 26 EA builds available as well. So, again, like if you want to start giving feedback, like, the earlier you can kind of get feedback in the EA process, the greater the opportunity, the more time there is to act upon that and incorporate that feedback. But yeah, absolutely, now is a great time to start, setting up some sort of pipeline in your builds to start taking in 25 EA.
You're reminding me to kick myself a little bit. Because the last time I installed Java 24 early access, the last time you were here, we were still celebrating the release of Java 23. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't give myself another pipeline. Like I tell customers to do all the time, I'm like, it's okay to have multiple pipelines, to build 2 different versions of things and have them run side by side. I wish that I would have done that because on another project, I ran into a bug. I've had months to be looking at Java 24. And on this other project, I was trying to update to Java 24, of course, on Tuesday, like everybody else. As soon as it came out, I wanted to be on the latest and greatest. And I tried to show that demo in front of a customer, and guess what? It didn't work.
Oh, no.
I blame myself because I didn't create these pipelines. I know when Java 25 is coming, I'm not going to be caught by that same mistake again. I'm going to create pipelines so that the software that I take to production, the systems that I have in place, when Java 25 is live, I'm going to be ready to take John. I'm not going to be caught off guard.
Good.
I'm going to know ahead of time when I run into issues.
And that's a good way if, that way you can immediately go to Java 24. We actually, Nikolai and I, we ran into a attendee who, like right when Java 24 was released, actually started pushing something to production on Java 24, which is just kind of like, oh my God, like, we were so excited, and then like he was talking about like he follows all of our content on YouTube. And like it wasn't just saying that, like he was like saying, he's like, oh, I like the background in like my videos, like all the brick and stuff. And it's like, okay, you're not just saying it, like you're like, oh yeah, I saw one video. It's like,
and he probably had
like you're our favorite attendee.
From the Java 24 early access. So he had all the confidence in the world when that released that it was available that he could go. And he got all the benefits in production once it was there.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Every release. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah. I should say every release, there's small performance updates and other operational benefits. So like when Java 25 is going to be pretty popular because that's going to have a release that has long-term support with it. So one of the things we'll do as a team is do a bunch of videos covering like all the overall changes between 21 and 25. But a good way to always be taking advantage of that if you kind of stick with every release, and then also you would never have to pay for any long-term support because you can always just stick with those new releases.
I love that idea.
Yeah,
I love that idea. You mentioned long-term support. What does long-term support mean?
So long-term support is a vendor concept. It's not a open JDK concept. So Oracle, yeah, exactly. Sam Verhoeven is already mentioning how we often have to clarify that. So yeah, like Oracle is one company that provides long-term support. And it's just like generally thing that's, well, we suggested saying like, hey, let's make every 4 releases a long-term support release. Now, any other company can choose to make any other release. If Microsoft wanted to say JDK 26 is they're going to be a long-term support release, they are free to do it. They would be alone in having to support that. But then but yeah, you then would have either a contract, or you would either, use some other freely supported long-term support release that gets continual updates. Because, the important thing is that over time, there's still going to be security vulnerabilities found. And then there's also, even beyond security vulnerability, there's just other things like Unicode updates, date time updates, locale changes. Like there's just some stuff that you can't even predict. Like a really good example, and this is like a bit from back in the day when the Japanese Hirohito, I think, emperor died, like back in like the late 1990s or early 2000s. Like we needed to do an emergency release because the Japanese calendar is the imperial calendar, which is obviously based upon the emperor. And so once a new emperor becomes is selected, then that changes their count, and like obviously that can't be predicted ahead of time, and so there's always a bunch of different things like that. So that's some of the stuff that you need a long-term contract with, or at least a long-term support release for,
or beyond the latest version.
Beyond the latest version as well. Exactly. And that's always
like
free.
Nobody's forcing you to stay on an LTS release.
True.
Nobody's forcing you to upgrade. You have options. We're developers.
Exactly.
We have more options we have more things to think about.
I think you guys have a somewhat similar thing with the Spring. If you're always on the latest version of Spring, yeah, you would be in the same boat.
Yeah, and I think everybody should be on JDK 24. I think DaShaun, you were asking what were some of the major themes last week. Obviously, the biggest theme was JDK 24 was released, and I asked a lot of people kind of what features were they excited about. 2 really stood out, and so I was hoping we can kind of touch on those quickly. The first one was JEP 451, which was synchronized virtual threads without pinning. This seemed to get a lot of people excited because virtual threads came along in JDK 21. There was going to be this known issue if you were using synchronization in your code, but we got it out there. And with JDK 24, it kind of fixes one of these problems. Do you want to talk about this at a high level?
Yeah. So so kind of the name of the JEP resolving the pinning in synchronize kind of says it all. Is basically so it was most popularized, or most became well known, from a Netflix blog article back in June of last year. I think it came out, where I think it's like literally like, dude, where's my lock, or something like that. And basically what happened is that when you run into like a blocking operation in a synchronized IO block or synchronized block, it can just end up being pinned, and that underlying, so like a virtual thread sits on top of a platform thread, which is like basically equivalent to, the old threads, which is like a one-to-one relationship with the underlying operating system and all that stuff. And so it wouldn't unpin from that virtual thread. So then you don't get the real benefits of significant concurrency improvement with using virtual threads. And I think there maybe was like a little bit more issues as well with that then as well, that is covered in a Netflix article. And basically this JEP resolves that to where I guess a virtual thread within a synchronized block can become unpinned if it detects it within a blocking operation. I haven't really gone into the operational side and done like the comparison of it, but it was the resolution for that.
So it's no longer tied to that carrier thread, which again is what the whole point of a virtual thread is. It can kind of be untied to a carrier thread, go about its business until it needs to kind of come back and finish things off. So that was really important, because if you're using synchronized blocks in your application and you're using virtual threads, like you said, you lost that scalability there. So these things that you were hoping you weren't going to run into, you ran into these things that, like these operations that would now take forever, because if you had a lot of concurrency going through them, then you weren't seeing the benefits. So now JDK 24 kind of fixes one of those. And you may not have seen them in all situations. Virtual threads were really great for, hey, I have a web application that talks to a database or talks to some other service, and maybe we weren't doing anything that was needed to be synchronized, right? But for those of us who were running into that, I think this was a really big feature. And again, asking people one of the things I did every time I ran into somebody was like, what is your favorite feature in JDK 24? A lot of people kind of mentioned that particular one because they were running into that issue, and now they feel like, oh, I'm unlocking virtual threads in my application. So again, I don't know that I'd wait for JDK 25. I would update to JDK 24 if you're in that situation and take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other one that I heard a lot from everyone, and I see Simon here said it, and Jitter Ted has said it, was the new gatherers support feature, which is, which one is that? 485 stream gatherers. So yeah, you want to talk about this kind of at a high level as well?
Yeah. So gatherers, so like an issue with streams is that you had somewhat of a limited ability to actually transform the elements of that stream as they were processing through the stream. Like you had an opportunity at the end with like collect or map to kind of really do kind of whatever you wanted with that the final end result of it.
Finisher.
But if
the finisher.
Yes, the finisher, the terminal operation. And essentially what gatherers is giving you that ability to do a substantial transformation. You know, it could be one to many, many to one, many to many kind of transformations on the data going through that stream. And that is what gatherers provide. So yeah, there's a few examples within the JEP. And I'm sure like there's also plenty more examples that have been also shown by other JDK engineers on that. So yeah, no, I know that was something that a lot of people were really looking forward to, like Simon and Ted.
I was really excited about it as well. So like you have all these intermediate operations that you can run, like filter, map, and you can get a long way with those. But there is a small percentage of opportunities where you're like, I have to write all this like really clunky code to try to do what I'm trying to achieve here. And so gather is like first off, there's a gatherers class that adds a whole bunch of static methods that you can kind of pull in. So if you want to do things like scan or I can't remember all of them. There's a bunch of like intermediate operations.
Window, I think was another one.
Window with fix, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's those. But it also gives you the opportunity to like write your own gatherers, which are really cool. I just wrote a blog post on this because I was like, after the conference, I was excited about it. And like, I had an example of like, okay, well, I have this blog post. I have this list of posts, right? And normally I could say like, hey, posts, go ahead and filter on a category and just limit them to 3. But if I wanted to like do that for every category, so for every category in my blog, I want to get the last 3 posts. You could do that previously, but again, there was like some clunky code that you had to write to make that happen. And writing your own gatherers now gives you that intermediate operation where I can just say, hey, group by with limit, and I can pass it in my posts and kind of get down to that what I'm trying to achieve. So just more elegant and gives you more options. If you ever found yourself going filter or map doesn't like do exactly what I want it to do, how can I do that? Gatherers really kind of helps you out there. So excited about that as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like, you know, one of the reasons like it was added is like it's something that like only we could do. Because like at the end of JavaOne, I mentioned like there was like a Ask the Architects panel, and like sometimes there was like some questions that would come up, like, you know, why don't you do some of these features? And like sometimes it's a case of like there was something like I think regarding like math features or something like that, you know, like some other languages, like I think Python like has like certain math features built in. But like we deliberately don't do that because like some of these things just like, well, anyone can do that, you know, and so we'll just leave that to the incredible Java community, to the incredible Java ecosystem to provide a library that does that, and you can just then choose that library that, you know, maybe best matches that needs for you, rather than us necessarily doing that, because then, you know, we have to support it, and then that means we can't do other things as well. So.
Right.
Yeah. So like gatherers, like only we could do that.
Yep. if you didn't get a chance, DaShaun, to watch the keynote on the first day, it was really good. And I pointed this out, but Mark Reinhold came on and like put up this screenshot of like all the things like people complain about or say things, right? Like Java is too difficult to teach, or virtual threads don't scale when I use synchronize. He had like all this list of all these things people complain about. And I was like, okay, well, we have an answer for that now. And so I thought that was really interesting. And again, we talked about backwards compatibility. Like other languages come out and they say, look at all these nice new shiny features. And it's like, well, great. You got to start from zero and take the last 30 years and put it into a language that just started today. But Java is working on a language that is backward compatible for 30 years. And happy birthday to Java. By
30 years.
Yeah, I know.
And
I
still
know.
being able to run on old
weren't born when Java was born.
Exactly.
They weren't even a thing.
Yeah. So that was really cool to see. And it really does just amaze me, like how Java has just keeps on innovating. And I didn't mention this, but JDK 24 had 24 JEPs, the largest release since we've moved to this kind of 6-month cadence, right? Like JDK 9 had I can't even remember how many, a whole bunch in it, but since the 6 months cadence, JDK 24 has the most JEPs in it. And that was really exciting to see. So
and you kind of brought up something good about like other languages. So something that we talked about, like there's again, oftentimes we see in like our YouTube channel, like the comment of like, oh, gatherers like, Kotlin or C# or Python like had this n number of years ago. I mean, actually Python's a little bit older than Java, but like so many of these other languages, like, oh, they had this years ago, and like Java's finally catching up. But like that's also sometimes a deliberate choice, is that like Mark Reinhold, I think actually in that keynote even talked about like Java's last mover advantage. I know Brian Getz also mentions that many times. So it's like, so we watch these other languages and see like, okay, someone like, like Kotlin implemented data types and these are coroutines, and these other languages would implement certain other kinds of behaviors. And we kind of say, we wait to see, it's like, okay, how was that implemented? Is the community, was it just a few very loud people in the community that actually wanted it, and then the actual broader community doesn't take it on? Or is it, okay, yep, that was implemented and everyone loves it, or okay, it was implemented, but it's like, oh, there's like these two, uncomfortable areas that could be improved upon. A really good example of that would be derived records or withers for records, where it's just like, so you already have your record, and it's like, okay, like, like I just had my birthday recently, and so like, let's say you have a person record that included an age, and you just wanted to keep that same record but just update my age for it. That's a wither thing. And so like C# I think implemented it as very much like a property thing. It was just, like, okay, now it's going to be like Billy, it's going to be updated, and then like age and like all that stuff. Very like there was no logic you could put into this. Whereas I think one of the goals with our way of implementing it is that it's like a free form block that you can kind of do whatever kind of logic you want to do in that, to where if you could do calculation of like just take the age and add 1 to it, instead of like specifically having to set the age. So that can also be a case of like,
I love Brian Getz's talk where he talked about that, being able to destructure things is the same way that we kind of put things in, the same way we kind of get things out, which was really interesting to see. Something else I noticed during the keynote that would have got you really excited, DaShaun, you got to watch this keynote, is that they went into like a lot of talk about like garbage collection performance. And even Netflix came up on stage, and they had Spring on their slides. Our good friend Paul Baker was up there and talked about like one of the biggest things they did was just update to like JDK 21, and how much performance benefits they got out of just that garbage collection change, right? There's different garbage collectors out there, and they have their pros and cons, but there's some like been some really significant performance improvements in the garbage collection over the last like 3-4 versions of the JDK, and that was like super exciting to see. And DaShaun is always going around telling people, just update your JDK first, and you're going to get a whole bunch of free stuff.
Right. And even to Rajiv, he's like, hey, like, let me look at somebody else's benchmark. Netflix's benchmarks don't matter to you. They're not the same. You're not going to see the millions of dollars of 10% performance improvement. It doesn't matter. What you need to do and I'm sorry, I get excited about this, is you need to create your own pipelines. You need to do it with yours, and you need to run it side by side and prove it to yourself. That's what we need to do. That's the answer. Do as I say, not as I do. I'll do it from the
Yeah, I mean, in fact, actually, in this release, there was another update to the G1 garbage collector where basically it was just like how, so like the JVM has the JIT, which does like optimizations, and they just did some update to it to where that's just a bit more efficient, you know. So like it's with every release, it just gets a bit more, CPU efficient or better with memory management or.
So these are the just-in-time improvements.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. And one of the, I know, I think Ravi or Rajiv, sorry, Rajiv Kumar, was also mentioning like the AOT cast support. And actually, I think Sebastian Deluz, like I think he's been doing a lot of work on that. But yeah, so there was also a big update is another one, Project Leiden, which is focusing on startup and time to peak performance, which we're running out of time, but like that's a whole topic in of itself. But the first JEP from that project made it into JDK 24,
483.
Which is about improving the class linking and loading. But yeah, definitely check that out. That can just, I think actually with your guys' Spring Boot Plet Clinic app, like they were seeing maybe about a 40%,
40%, improvement. Pretty cool to see.
Yep.
I think I put the link up earlier, but if you haven't had a chance to check out the JDK OpenJDK project /JDK/24, that is a really good place for, hey, these are all the features that went into this. But I know with JDK releases, it's not just all like those features, right? There's some other things that were kind of attached to 24. Usually I kind of read through some of your notes, but where can folks find out like everything that kind of went into 24? Where if I want to read up on some of these little changes that were made?
Yeah, I think actually at that link, there should be a link to the release notes, and I think
there is. Sorry.
So that has it. Also on the Java YouTube channel. So this youtube.com/Java is our YouTube channel that we run. One of the things I do is I do a video where I just literally go through the entirety release notes. So actually, I broke it up into 3 separate videos. So we released it actually on March 13th, which was, again, my birthday. The release notes that kind of developers would particularly care about. And then here sometime pretty soon, we're going to release, I already have it recorded, but the videos will be released that focus on then for like operations and then security. So if those are things you kind of care about, you can listen to those. But I did that because like reading through those release notes isn't super exciting, and it can be really easy to miss something that would be maybe important to you. So like maybe while you're running, you can just like listen to that one of those videos, and then you might just hear like, oh wait, there's like an update to localization, and that might impact something I'm doing.
Matters to me.
That matters to you. So like that's why I did those. So yeah, definitely check those out. Like I said, those operations and security should be hopefully released here sometime in the next week or so. Hopefully, because we have a lot of content coming out. So we're, like I said, we try to make sure it all breathes. So we'll, have a schedule for all that.
Awesome. Well, I said it at the beginning, but I just want to, again, thank you guys. You guys on the DevRel team there are doing an amazing job. I love all of the content coming out, the YouTube channel, you and Nico, and Jim does a great job with the podcast. Like there's so many avenues to like learn Java from your team. Again, there's a lot of people up on stage that are a part of this team, so I'm not leaving anyone out on purpose. But your entire team is doing an awesome job. So thank you for that. Go ahead and check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Java. Where else can we get in touch with you, Billy, if we want to talk to you?
So on Blue Sky, I'm not super active, but like that could be a place. I do need to probably be on there a bit more because I've been missing it since I kind of left Twitter. So yeah, I've been kind of looking. Been nice to kind of get a community going again on that to like share and talk with people. You can also email me at billy.korando@oracle.com as well if you have any questions.
Perfect.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yes.
In my little travels over here in Europe, you can't even get to Twitter in a lot of places.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Not even a thing. You can't even get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, my decision is
Yeah. So unfortunate. Like I miss a lot of people. Don't get to see us quite as much anymore. So, but I did get to see a lot of them these past couple of weeks between Dev Nexus, which was early March, and then also JavaOne. So that was great.
It's been a lot of fun. Billy, thanks again for coming on again. Again, this was your second time. We will have you back again for sure. And again,
at the latest
your team
in September.
Yes, that might be a big release.
That'll be a big one. All right. Thanks, Billy. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you in the next one.
All right. See you guys.